Welcome back to the Cream City Club podcast. I'm Spencer Michaelis, and I'm here as always with Gunnar Amlunk. Gunnar, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. This is the only time of the year where I can stand watching college basketball, and I just wanted to remind you that the Badgers lost this weekend, Spencer, just to make you sad for no reason. But I'm doing well. How you doing?
I don't want to do the podcast anymore. I'm done. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm still not. I don't know what is up with me right now, but I'm still not super healthy, but definitely doing
Same.
better.
Yeah. We're both
Definitely
gonna sound
doing
like we've
better.
been smokers our whole lives, but that's not the
I know.
case.
Never, not once, not once, but yet I'm always sick. Maybe I have to start. No, I will
Well,
not be doing that. If you're listening and haven't yet subscribed, please take a moment to do so on whatever platform you are listening on and to rate us 5 stars. Follow us on Twitter at the Cream City Pod to stay up to date on these episode releases. And today is going to be a Bucks focused episode, our first one in quite a while. So, Gunnar, what do we got on the menu tonight?
as always, for these Bucks episodes, we're going to be going over our game recaps. We're going to be going over the Suns game, Celtics game, Nets game, and Thunder game, which was all in this last week. We have some bigger discussions we're going to be talking about, a little sneak peek into those. This age-old discussion that we've heard on Twitter that is a pretty stupid discussion, but we'll touch on it because there's probably some realistic parts to it. Are the Giannis-less Bucks a little bit better team than they normally are? The answer to that is no, but we'll be diving into that a little bit. Doc Rivers had a big crunch time defensive decision against the Celtics. We'll dive deeper into that and what that means going forward for this team. And a little bit bigger of a discussion we can round up here, and it's a big topic, but we'll make it small here. But as far as it goes for the Bucks, is the NBA's physicality in the second half of the season, it it's ticked up a little bit here, and we're going to discuss why that is, and if it benefits the Bucks in any way possible, because the refs are letting things go, it seems like. And then, of course, this injury updates and smaller things like that. So first, we're going to dive into the Suns game, which was all the way last week, Sunday on St. Patrick's Day. The Bucks prevailed with no Giannis, no, and Khris was finally back in this one, which we've been waiting for a while. Spencer, do you have any just smaller notes as far as this one goes? I know it's a while ago now, but just any quick notes on this Suns game?
I love Chris Middleton. I was
Yep.
very happy to see him back. 22 points in what, 25-ish minutes or something, 30 minutes maybe.
Hmm.
I don't know. Either way, he looked very good. It was great to see him immediately able to bounce back in and just start performing right away. 8 for 15, 2 for 4 from three. He looked like Chris. And sometimes when he's come back from injury, it hasn't always looked like the Chris we are used to right away. So it was really nice to see him just jump out there and play really well. I have a theory that the Bucks need to trick Jay Crowder into believing every team is the Suns because he enjoys playing against them. I would say probably like three of his five best games as a Buck are all against the Suns. He definitely has a little chip on his shoulder when he goes against them. So, and we'll talk about these next three games, but he has kind of carried it over. He's playing a lot better lately, it feels like in
Hmm.
general. And then Dame was just awesome. I mean, 31, 16 assists. It looked like he might be coming for Ramon Sessions for a little bit there in that one, but he I mean, he was just really, really good. And Bobby obviously had a huge game again with no Giannis with 31. And the first half, he just went absolutely insane and couldn't miss. Um, I didn't have too many real takeaways in this one. It was more we can talk about it in a second here, but it was just a ton of really good ball movement. Obviously, Dame got 16 assists, but what was it? 18 threes in the first half for the
Yep.
team.
Made
Yeah,
that note.
and it was mostly just swing to a corner three. Dame would drive. He wasn't necessarily always making the pass to the shot, but he was making the right read. And the next person was making the right read, whether that was to take the shot or to make the extra pass. So that was just a really fun game. No Giannis, obviously, so kind of have to make shots in those types of games, or you're probably not going to win. But they clearly did, and even when they slowed down in the second half, they had given themselves a nice cushion and were able to hold off the one main push that the Suns kind of gave them during that late third quarter. So just a good win.
Yeah. I mean, my notes too. I mean, Khris, obviously, it wasn't so much the stats that he put up, which you mentioned, which were obviously incredible. His mid-range game is unbelievably lethal this season. Is probably, I don't know what the stats in this exactly, but it's got to be one of his better seasons, and that's his bread and butter, which is even more incredible. But besides the stats, as I said, is he moved extremely well, and I even heard on the broadcast a couple times people pointing that out, or I heard from bigger media outlets that they're saying, "Well, Khris is back, and he actually looked really well," which is good that they actually pointed that out too, because usually all I care about is the stats. Bobby's, of course, monster first half. I think he did slow down in the second half. I want to say he was probably like 1 of 7 or something, even though he could not miss a shot in the first half. He was insane. Something I noticed that was different out of him was the quick release three, which is something we've been begging for from him when he shoots threes. When you get it, fire it. And maybe that's going to be tied into my discussion at the end of this rant here, but there's something different when there's probably something a little bit to Giannis not being on the floor, but it does seem like he just has a quicker release in general or a quicker trigger when it's the ball's moving around a lot more, which is what I want to see. But um, yeah, the lead, as you mentioned, was up to 21, I think, ish at one point, went all the way down to 7 at times in the third quarter and fourth quarter. And it seemed like Dame was the guy who showed up every single time and made a huge bucket. I think the end of the third quarter got down to, like I said, 7. We made like a three or something, came back down, and then it got to 12, and then Dame hit the three, and then it went to 15, which felt like, oh, okay, we're not going to blow this one. They even made another run in this one. Grayson had a big night in the fourth, or in general, but he hit a couple big shots in the fourth. Beal hit a couple big shots in the fourth. He was really keeping them in it. KD only took 10 shots. They were moving the ball around really well too. And one text I sent you was, if this goes into an offensive battle, I don't know if I trust us really in this one completely because they're so lethal offensively. And with us not getting easy Giannis baskets that we normally get, you're relying heavily on us making shots, which we're able to do all night. But you mentioned Jay, and this is where I was going to tie it into the Giannis part of it. Um, Going into this one, I want to say he was probably around like as low as like 24% from three in the new year, at least since he's been back from his injury. Not looking good at all, not moving well. You really notice it when he's not making shots. I joked with you. I don't even know if what his floater percentage was at that point. It was looking like he could not make any shot possible, and couldn't stay in front of guys, frankly, on defense too. But um, the Grayson part of this is why this conversation sort of sparked it for me because I remember earlier in the season I might have brought this up. Um, he mentioned how he loved his time in Milwaukee, but he loves his time a little bit more in the Suns. Maybe not the exact verbiage he used, but he's playing a lot better on the Suns. And he said, "Look, I get to do a little bit more stuff with the Suns versus when I'm on the Bucks. I loved it. I love playing with Giannis, but it's a lot of driving kick, and I'm sitting there waiting for my shot, and it's just on me to make the shot or not. And then I got a driving kick or something. But he gets to be more free on offense, and I think maybe there was something a little bit to that with Jay Crowder." Without Giannis. Now, Jay should be a guy who excels with Giannis. That should be the easiest part of his job, but he was making floaters in this one, is what I noticed when he couldn't make floaters before. Hitting threes in guys' face, quick release, just like Bobby. Um, I guess this is where I can kind of shove the question to you a little bit as I'll answer it too. Um, with, I think the ball does move slightly better without Giannis in that aspect that Grayson was talking about. It's not just if Giannis is the main ball handler, it's not driving kicks. Giannis is our first option. Oh, that didn't work. Now let's go and try to hit a three or whatever else the case is. Let's go to our second and third options. Where Dame, as you mentioned, the high assist rates, he was getting everybody else involved. There's not a sole guy outside of Dame, of course, but he was moving it so well. Bobby was shooting, like I said, quick release. It's just everybody's involved. It's also as simple as if you just remove a 30% usage-ish guy from your lineup, of course it's going to move more because that's what's the next answer. You don't have a next answer outside of course, we have Dame and Khris back, but Khris is on shorter minutes. It's not just going to be as simple as, okay, Dame, now you go up to 40% usage. That's not how it works. So I think it's just a little bit of all of that. Doesn't mean we're better without Giannis, as I stated in the opening remarks there, is we're not better without Giannis, not even close, but these games do tend to fool people. I notice on Twitter, and we've saw a lot of this before we won the championship, how many times people would bring this up without Giannis, and it just gets more notice in these games. And I'm happy that like you mentioned with Jay, these types of games do tend to give them confidence back. And we saw that now with Giannis back. Jay's looked incredible. Guys like Pat Connaughton has looked incredible. Um, So I just think it helps everybody else in the long run. But do you think there's anything to maybe Giannis being out and other guys stepping up? And it seems like we're playing a much more team-friendly basketball, even though it's not really the case. But why does it always seem like that's the case without Giannis sometimes?
I think it is the case. Um, the question is a team of Jay Crowder, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, is that more them moving the ball around? Is that more valuable than what Giannis can do when he just drives to the hoop? And if they're making shots like they did in that Suns game, yeah, absolutely it is. I guess the thing for me is that it's definitely better ball movement without Giannis. Ball moves more, team touches it more. They get more open looks, probably. I wouldn't say more open looks, but they get them in rhythm more. Um, if you look at like the prime Warriors, their role players made a lot of big shots over the course of games. And my belief is that those guys were so involved in that offense. Now they weren't shooting that often during those games, but that offense was moving the ball side to side and then having Steph and Clay running off screens. But everybody was touching the ball. Everybody was involved in the offense. They just weren't supposed to shoot unless they were wide open. In the Giannis led offense, it's like Grayson's saying, he's sitting in the corner, waiting for a pass, waiting for a pass, kind of getting flat footed, waiting for a pass, and then it hits him, and it's a good pass, and he's wide open, but he's got no rhythm. He hasn't been involved in the offense, he hasn't been part of the entire play. So now it's just like shooting practice, but it's shooting practice where you haven't touched the ball in probably a minute of game time. And that is hard. It's not easy. Now, people don't want to hear that necessarily. It sounds like a bad excuse, like, oh, I'm only getting wide open shots off of the catch. But you can even look at a guy like Dame, like he hasn't been a very good catch and shoot shooter. Like he wants to be involved in the play, and him just catching it not in rhythm or not, just standing on the outside, like he doesn't shoot that well on it. It's not the easiest thing in the world. And most of these guys were the best players their entire lives until they get to the NBA. So most of them handled the ball a lot. Most of them have been involved in the play on every single trip down. So I think the Bucks' best offense involves a like a primary action that involves kind of everybody, where everybody's moving around. Not everyone touches the ball, but everybody does something to start the action. And then the secondary action that actually is like the play is a Dame and Giannis pick and roll or Giannis attacking from the wing. But if you've kept everybody in motion and everybody's moving around and staying with like keeping the blood flowing, I feel like that makes it easier for them to make a shot at the end of it. And we saw it in that Suns game where guys were cutting to the dunker spot, then flowing through to the opposite corner and flowing to the wing from the corner. And they weren't necessarily touching the ball, but they weren't just stagnant, standing there waiting to get a pass. And I understand why that's a decent offense because it will get an open shot. It really will. Like teams are going to collapse on Giannis or they're going to give up 60. That's those are pretty much their options. Nobody's guarding them without collapsing. But can guys make shots under those circumstances? It's not as easy as it looks, I guess, from the outside. So I do think it gives a blueprint on how to at least one, Giannis is going to be off the court at times. So this is the way you want to play when Giannis is not on the court. And two, how to mix that in a little bit more while Giannis is on the court, how to keep guys involved and flowing in the offense, even if they're not going to shoot as often as they do with him out. So I don't know if you have different thoughts on that than that, but that's pretty much how I viewed it. And it's going to be hard to find that balance, but I think the absolute best Bucks offense has that balance. I don't know how you do it, but you do it. If you can do it, I don't think anyone's stopping them during the playoffs.
Yeah. And I can't harp on it enough to say this isn't me saying we're better without Giannis. That's not even close to what I'm saying, but it is a slight Giannis critique, and maybe that's within what you're trying to say, and I will say it, I guess, in my own way. But um, it is going to be on him to make the ball move, unfortunately, most times because he's going to have the ball. Um, but it goes into that motion what you're talking about. If guys are just stagnant, which we've seen in these next couple of games that we'll be talking about, and it's not moving around very well, guys aren't doing stuff off ball. What is Giannis to do? Well, our best point at that point is to go to Giannis and drive and do the stuff that he does. So it's on a lot of the other role players and things like that too to make it move. But our offense is good no matter what. Honestly, I just think you notice a lot more shots getting thrown up. It's not. Um, you've also mentioned this too to me in text and just us talking individually, but sometimes our best games are the ones where you have to play bully ball. That's what playoffs are sometimes. So, um, we'll talk about the Celtics too. That's going to be something that I think they might have a problem with in the playoffs, is they rely heavily on ball movement and shooting, which that was a lot of us in 2019-20, where, oh my God, we had this incredible offense. Threes are flying everywhere where you can't miss. Well, when the playoffs come around, what's your next move? Because that's not always going to be the case. And we have a guy like Giannis who we can get him easy buckets, and those are huge. Brooke Lopez, we can get him easy buckets. So, um, it's just a mix, like you said, and I don't even know what that answer is either, too. But um, when we do find that mix and that flow state, I guess you can call it, there's nobody who's going to be able to beat us in offensively because we have everything that we need in order to beat somebody. But sliding into that Celtics game, as I mentioned, um, some quicker notes that I have on this one before we fast forward to that critique of Doc Rivers crunch time that we'll be talking about at the end of this game. Um, Bad first half from us, I would definitely say. Not the best competing, but just not making shots, unfortunately. And a big one that I noticed, of course, and I know me and you noticed this, was Gallo over AJ Green. Um, we got heard post game that Doc kind of claimed it was because of size purposes, which with no Giannis, I might have said that again. I can never tell if I said this in the podcast or to you, but whenever we don't have Giannis, Bobby, or Brooke, then it's okay. I can hear an argument to play Gallo because you do need some size sometimes. But against the Celtics, they are playing quote bigs, but I don't think they're necessarily the biggest team in the world. We can definitely make by with having AJ Green instead of Gallinari out there. I know that for a fact against the Celtics, especially for how fast they move the ball. You're gonna need athletes out there at times. But he did hold his own. It wasn't like we lost this game because of Gallinari. I don't think he played horrible or anything, but definitely a game that I think AJ Green should have stepped up in and played, and we could have used some of his shots too when we were going down there. I think by like 20 at one point in the third quarter. I did notice Jaylen Brown very heavily on Damian Lillard early. He was fighting over screens, trying to stay on Dame, and it was working in that first quarter. I'll give him credit. Um, don't think it worked the whole time or anything like that, but especially by the end of it, Dame was being Dame. But maybe something that we'll have to focus on more if this is a playoff matchup is they're going to use Jaylen Brown as their guy. He's going to probably be on Damian Lillard a lot of the times, which I'm not that scared of it, but he did do okay. I'll give him his credit there. Fast forward into the second half, why we got back into this game for me, Bobby and Dame, we're seeing the polar opposites of what Bobby Portis does. That first half, I thought he was pretty bad, and we were losing, and we got down by 20 points. And then all of a sudden, Bobby gets on the heater. He's making shots. He's doing the little things. It seems like he's got energy, rebounding, um, and we get all of a sudden start crawling back into this game. He hit a couple big threes there, which got us close. Um, Fast forwarding to the point I want to talk about, Dame hit a three, Bobby got an and one. Um, he misses the free throw, which could have got us down by just 1 point, I believe. And then we hear right before he shoots that free throw is the buzzer go off, and we're like, "Oh, this is going to be for Malik Beasley to get subbed out here for Patrick Beverly." And then you see Patrick Beverly insistently pointing at Dame like he's, "No, you're coming out," and everyone's like, What's going on here? Why are we doing this?" Um, Fast forward to that, we do leave Malik Beasley in. They bring it down the court, so they're up by two at this point. A ticky-tacky foul. I won't even say it was much of a foul if it was at
That was
all,
a foul.
but
I know Bucks
yeah,
fans were complaining. That was absolutely a foul. Whatever.
I
Like we're
I think
complaining
it
about.
was a foul, and I don't disagree with that at all. I think the time of the game, did it affect anything? Did they lose possession? No. And we'll be talking about another bigger discussion is they're letting guys play, it seems like too. Was there any reason whatsoever for you to poke at that ball and try to push him? Absolutely not, especially when we're doing pretty good defense at that point. You're not gonna, maybe you get the tip away. You're not, he's got advantage on you, so I just don't think the risk and reward there wasn't worth it. But funny that it does come down to Malik Beasley following, and then it goes up by four, and that was pretty much all she wrote at that point. So, Spencer, if you have no other notes as far as just the game itself, do you have any like just
No. I think I
okay?
annoyed people with my Bobby tweet, but
Yeah,
I
I touched on that a little bit, but if you wanna
No,
talk
I know.
about the polar opposites of Bobby Portis. This was a good game to do it in too, because you saw it pretty much exactly what your tweet was saying. It was this game.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, I was saying that I was making fun of the people who posted the apology to Bobby letter that we saw all over Twitter for
Yeah.
for like a week, yelling at everyone to say sorry to him. First of
We stood
all,
on business. We did not apologize. We
we did not.
definitely laid it out.
We did not. First of all, I'm not apologizing to him because he was terrible in the first half and started playing better. He has played better. He has played better. Even while I'm getting annoyed with him still, he's playing better than he was in the first half. Bobby Portis he was an awful NBA player for like the Adrian Griffin era, basically, the entire time. And clearly that was partially an Adrian Griffin problem, but it doesn't mean he wasn't bad. He was bad. Um, he's playing better lately. He's definitely starting to make more shots and stuff. But you see it so clearly. If he is not making like 70% of his shots in a game, he's rarely doing anything else that impacts winning positively. And I got one guy in my replies who was saying, like, oh, yeah, that's everybody in the NBA who, if it's not, Dame, Khris, or Giannis, that's the whole team. It's like, no, it's not. Brook Lopez is going to play defense. He's going to box out. He's going to do stuff like that. Pat Beverly doesn't need to score to make an impact in a Bucks game. I want him to make an open shot if he's got an open shot, but he doesn't need the score to make an impact. Malik Beasley and Bobby Portis do. They have to make shots or they're not positive. Even Pat Connaughton currently is doing a lot of good little things right now where even if he's not making his threes, which he has at a pretty high level, he's still doing things that can help you win a game. Bobby has to make shots, and that's fine. That's his role. But when he's not, he's very hard to watch. And I don't understand how people don't like. I can't watch him if he's not making shots. It infuriates me to watch him play basketball if he's not making shots most of the time. Um, there are games, and we'll get to the Thunder game, where he does move the ball and there's actually some passing going on and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, now you see, like, okay, he's doing something to help, even though he's not making shots, whatever. That was really my only takeaway is that immediately after that tweet is when he started getting hot. And then people tried to shove it in my face. I'm like, that was the entire point of the tweet, guys. If he's making every single shot, he does help. Um, and I do want to point out, I was looking at the box score. AJ Green, 8 minutes plus 14. Um, he absolutely should have been playing in that game over Gallinari. It wasn't, there's just no debate. He didn't even make shots, but it's just a completely different level of attention that he brings on offense
Hmm.
for the defense. And like you said, he's way more athletic. He can actually stay in front of a Jaylen Brown or a Tatum. He's not going to lock him up, but he can guard him. He can at least make him work. Um, did he take a charge in that game, or was that the Suns game? I remember him taking a charge right in the middle of the lane.
I
On
don't
so I think
remember.
it was I thought it was Brown maybe that he took it off. But either way, he does stuff like that, and he's another one. I know he's known for being this big shooter, but I think when he's in the game, he can impact winning even if he's not making shots. Like I think he's capable of that, which is why I'm so excited about Green lately. Either way, I don't have much more on that game, but I do want to talk about the sub thing because it really annoyed me in the moment. So taking Dame out in that spot, first of all, in my opinion, Dame is a better defender than Malik Beasley, point blank. He's better at defense. If both of them are locked in, give me Dame. Dame has ridiculously good hands on defense, like really, really good hands on defense. He's not dumb, and Beasley's not super dumb on defense either, but the foul at the end of the game was just stupid. There was no reason to be leaning on and jumping over the top on that pass. Like there was no reason for it. He had zero chance of getting his hand on that basketball. Like second, you get that rebound. You play good defense, you get a stop. I want the ability to push the ball when I get the stop. I don't want to have to call timeout, let them put all their defensive subs in and start going down the court from there with 7 seconds. Like I want to be able to get the rebound, toss it to Dame and say, go. And if he's on the bench, you can't do that. And I know you got to play for the stop, but if it was like Malik Beasley's this lockdown defender and Dame sucks, then I'd get doing what he's doing and taking that time out and saying, hey, we got to get the stop. At the very least, there's no difference in them defensively. So now you're sacrificing the ability to potentially run off of the rebound. And third, it clearly pissed Dame off. And I'm not saying a coach shouldn't be willing to do something that annoys a star player. Like in the overarching look at things, I'm actually happy Doc is willing to do something that would piss Dame off or that would piss Giannis off if he thinks it's the right thing, but I just did not agree with that decision whatsoever. So um, we'll talk about what happened in the next game then when Dame made it a very clear point that, hey, I should be in there during crunch time defense. And you know what? I don't want to give Doc too much credit, but perhaps he was trying to teach him that, like, I mean, the Lakers game was pretty bad. Dame screwed that coverage up on D'Lo, and it was a rough one. So maybe Doc was trying to make a point like, hey, if you're not going to figure it out in these crunch time moments, then we're going to have to take you out. My counter to that would be I can't remember one other time outside of that Lakers game where Dame wasn't locked in crunch time playing good defense. He's been pretty good in the clutch on defense. So um, I don't know. Maybe he was trying to teach a lesson. Maybe that was the whole point of all this. But if not in a vacuum, I just didn't like the decision from the start. And it looked even worse once Beasley made the stupid foul. But Gunnar, you kind of gave your thoughts. Do you have more on that one?
Yeah, you stole my other thought too with the Lakers game. I think that was probably the fear was, and I was trying to look while you're talking. I think was Brook Lopez at the end of that game too? Was
Yep.
it he pulled? He was okay. So, well, I know the Lakers game, but the Celtics game was he
Oh,
in there?
I think it might have just been Bobby, but I don't
Yeah,
remember.
because he was out for most of that fourth quarter, which this could be a slight adjustment because of that Lakers game we saw, like you mentioned, D'Lo. I remember Brook was part of that too, where he
Yeah.
was in the drop too much, and then he got his floaters off pretty easily. Um, I think that's a decent adjustment too that he made defensively, which we can get into. We don't have to get into Brook Lopez as part of this, but it'll be a tough matchup for him with the Celtics team. But I think to do something different than what you said. Um, you just don't pull stars out at the end of that game unless they're horribly at in defense. And you mentioned all the reasons why Dame is not that on top of it. It just doesn't happen in the NBA where you pull stars out necessarily in those situations. Um, and for all the reasons you said, Dame is very deserving of being on that floor for a lot of reasons. Especially when you're leaving out a guy like Malik Beasley, which also makes no sense. But um, I thought at first it sent a bad message to him. I was telling you, let's prepare for a bomb of a Damian Lillard quote here at post game because he seems awfully mad. He did make a three at the end of the game, which I'm like, oh, maybe he looked like himself. Maybe he feels okay about it, but we didn't get a message after the game. Um, and then of course sliding into the Nets game, he did show up defensively. I guess to wrap up that Celtics game too, I should probably mention that Tatum was an absolute zero in the second half, which is also why we came back. I forgot to say that. Um, and Kristaps, he was. I mentioned Brook. I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. I missed these part of my notes. He was attacking disadvantages a lot and mismatches in that first half, and he kind of went cold in the second half too. So both of those guys going completely cold in the second half compared to being completely hot. I think that was also a reason why we came back in this one. But as I mentioned, sliding into that Nets game, really good first half. This was the second night of a back to back, just doing all the right things, it felt like. And then when you slide into the second half, got very stagnant. I think even Doc Rivers said that, where it was a lot of ISO balls, not a lot of movement. Guys just sort of looking at each other saying, well, we got a nice lead here. It's felt very close to that Utah Jazz game, I felt like to me, where we got a nice lead here. We're just gonna relax, and then now it's not even close. Now we're losing. What's going on here? Um, but then we were locked down defensively for sure. Hit some big shots from Dame. And then that was it for me, which is how we slid into Damian Lillard there, and had two huge pokeaways, which led to offense immediately. Um, all sorts of guys making shots for us there at the end. So, do you have any main notes from this Nets game outside of the Damian Lillard redemption tour?
No, I mean the defensive plays were huge. I just loved the first one when he poked it away from Cam Thomas, got it, pushed it ahead to Crowder, flipped it to Giannis for the and one, and that was the most emotion we'd seen Dame show, I think, as a Buck. I honestly I watched him a lot. I don't remember ever seeing him as like animated as he was after that. He was screaming and pumping his fists and going absolutely insane. And I really have never seen that from him ever. Um, it was cool to see. And I'll say it reminded me of Giannis in a lot of ways where it was a play that he didn't make. A lot of times Giannis is going to give like the biggest fist pump and that type of stuff. I've seen him do it after like a Khris and one or somebody else making a big shot. Like that's the kind of mindset he has, is that it's not to boost his own ego. It's to, I mean, just he's just pumped up about the team doing well. But I do think there was an element of like screaming, probably. If we could hear, if it was mic'd up, I would bet there was something about don't take me out in crunch time. I can play defense, something along, obviously not those words, but along those lines. Um, I do have to shout out AJ Green also in that one, 5 threes. He he's shooting for, I mean, he's taking like 30 footers, and it's just not even a second thought for him now. And it's awesome to see. I mean, I'm very excited about AJ Green, and the fact we have him for 2 more years locked up on a very, very cheap minimum, non-guaranteed deal. Like, that was very good work by Horst in the summer to get that one locked in, because I believe at the end of that contract, he'll have bird rights and we'll be able to, if he's still the guy that I think, if he continues to develop like I think he could, we should be able to keep him as part of the next wave of kind of Giannis's next era, I would say, of the team. Um, but yeah, I guess on Giannis quickly, every time he comes back from injury, the touch just always looks off a little bit, and he didn't look exactly right to me. It's just a little bit strong on a lot of stuff. He doesn't necessarily have the right feel for the game whenever he comes right back, but he still had 21, 9 and 5 and only 2 turnovers. So like even Giannis's not great performances are just like games that we would have viewed as unbelievable performances by most of the Bucks in our childhood. So um no, he appeared to be back though in the next game, and that was Oklahoma City. So before we jump into that though, I do want to ask, because I know we had kind of different opinions on this. How do you feel about how the Bucks handled the Giannis sitting against Boston and then playing the next night against the Nets? What did you think about that? Did you think right decision? I mean, now we have the benefit of hindsight, so you can use that to your advantage if you want. But yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
I trust that he's hurt for sure. We thought now fast backtracking like a week and a half when the first hamstring came up, we're like, oh, it's a hamstring injury, and then came out that he's missing the Suns game. So you're like, okay, that's gonna be 6, 7 days of rest at that point. We actually had a nice break there. So it's like, okay, he's gonna be ready to go. It's just a little hamstring. We haven't even seen this pop up in the injury report yet this year for him. If it did once or something, like it's a hamstring, it wasn't that big of a deal. Um, and then it comes to Celtics Day, he was warming up, and then I guess he didn't play. So then I'm like, okay, well, he must be hurt then for sure. I didn't even think about the fact that, oh, he's trying to duck the Celtics, whatever stupid fans were saying. It's not the case. It was because, okay, he's hurt, and knowing Giannis, he wants to compete in this type of a game, even though I know it means nothing. It's a regular season. We beat them by 50. They all sat their players at halftime last time. Um, so then, yeah, it was. I felt like he was hurt. So then, in my mind, I felt like, okay, he's not going to play tomorrow. Then it's going to be a back-to-back, a team that I think we could beat without him. And I would rather see him get his rest, which we've been talking about for a while. Is let's just be healthy going into the playoffs. We can, whenever he needs his rest. He was on a long streak there playing games. If this is the time where he needs his breaks now and he has to take a couple games off, I'm totally fine. Even if this means punting the Nets game, this, as I mentioned with the Celtics game, if that loss meant nothing, I felt like the Nets loss meant nothing too to me. If it did happen, again, I think we still could have won even without him. But yeah, I just felt like maybe he shouldn't have played. But and again, hindsight's now what 2020. We saw him in the Thunder game and he was fine. So um, maybe it's one of those things where it's super touchy. And like you told me, like he could have showed up the next day and he had all that work. He stayed back in Wisconsin, so he had all that work done. It's a whole less day of travel, 24 hours travel on a plane sitting there. You can't get work done. A lot can change in one day. It just felt like maybe it's part of Giannis's competitiveness. He marked on the calendar, I'm playing the next home game, which was Thursday, and that's why he wanted to play, and he was going to get ready for that day. Um, but to me, I have such this bigger hindsight goal for the season after the Heat just crushed my soul, where I just don't care who we play. I just want to be healthy and ready to go for the playoffs. And I just didn't feel like the Nets game was worth playing, if especially with a touchy hamstring. I just don't want him pushing it in any sort of sense. Um, but again, and on top of it, he didn't look great in this one, which we needed them to win. It's not like I didn't want him out there. I just could have did without him playing, I guess. Um, Only for his health's sake. That's the only reason why then. I don't remember. I think I said, well, if he played today, maybe he could have played in the Celtics game, and I would have wanted to see that. I don't want him pushing an injury either. It's not, as a fan, of course, I want to see him against the Celtics. It's fun to watch, but I guess yeah, I'm just not ranting, but I didn't want to see him push an injury. I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I get it. To me, it was just one, Khris was going to sit the second of a back-to-back. You kind of knew that. I think they thought they could beat the Celtics without Giannis, and I honestly think, I know you didn't like this. I do think that the Bucks didn't want the Celtics to see their big three together and be able to to try different things on the court against them, to try different matchups against them. I'm curious if Drew would have played if Giannis was active because he was kind of a game time-ish decision as well. I think the Bucks decided, okay, he's only playing one of these games. Let's not give the team that we are probably most not afraid of, but the team that matches up the best against us, let's not give them a look at all three of them together. So for me, I mean, I know some people wouldn't like thinking that way, and I get it because, and I'm sure what you're about to talk about is probably the Heat series and planning ahead too much and doing stuff like that. I don't necessarily see that as like planning ahead that you're absolutely going to face the Celtics, you're absolutely going to. But to me, they are the team that you don't want having an advanced scouting report of your guys for. Like they have the personnel to try tons of different things. They have lots of like they could put Xavier Tillman in there and have him try and play the Grant Williams type role against Giannis, which is just a bigger, shorter big man who just gets into him and tries to annoy him and piss him off. And it's worked pretty well in the past at times. They've got Drew. They've got even a guy like Derek White who can annoy him for a little bit by just poking around. Like the more times they get to test things out, I feel like the more likely they are to find plans that work and different opportunities and ways they can mix and match, not even just doing the same thing, but like if they have three different coverages they can throw at them, that's one of Giannis's, I would say, bigger weaknesses is reading changes to the defense. Like after three or four possessions, he'll pick up on what they're doing and start to expose it. But if they change it again and then they continue to change it, that's what at times the Heat have done against them and teams like that have done against them. They'll throw doubles from different parts of the court at them. They'll do all this stuff. And like the Celtics have the personnel to do that. So if Giannis was fully healthy, I don't think they would have done this. But I do think it plays into the decision. If it's all right, he's playing one of these games, we might as well make it Brooklyn. We won't have Khris for that one. Let's just let Khris and Dame try and figure things out against the Celtics, against a good backcourt, good team, good defense, see what they can do. And I mean, it was a 3-point loss. I mean, it was really like a 6-point loss. Dame hit that three at the buzzer. That really didn't matter. But um, you can talk about how you feel about it. I know you don't love it. And personally, I don't love that idea, but I do think as a coach, I would consider it. Like if I were Doc Rivers and that would be part of my decision-making process when I'm trying to figure out if I want Giannis to play in this game or if I want him to play the next one.
Yeah, I think we both probably don't even disagree with each other necessarily. I think back to when we won in 2021, and it felt like we finally had the mentality of we don't care who we play anymore. We don't care what you've seen of us. We just laid out for us. We have to prove ourselves that we have to compete anybody. So we get the Heat, who the year before they figured out Giannis. We won one game in the second round of the bubble series. Um, Even before that, we in 2019 we played the Celtics, who that was our hurdle before those years. And we were able to get to the Eastern Conference Finals because we said, screw you, we're Celtics, we're better than you now. And now you've won one game. Um, and then going 2021, you have to play the Nets in the second round. Oh no, the big bad Nets, the big three, or whatever. Things happen in that series, whatever, but we had to power through that. And then we proved ourselves we're in the finals. Um, I think even to your point of them not learning Giannis, I do feel like they obviously know Giannis, and for everything you said too, though, like they know what Giannis is going to bring, but they don't know how they're going to figure it out yet necessarily. So they do have a new tool with Drew Holiday. They've seen a little bit of it in December whenever we played them the first time, but a lot of things changed from then. Our team's a lot more sturdy now. We know how to play with our guys more, so I get that part of it. I also get part of it too of there's the other side of that coin where we had to figure out how to beat the Celtics too. So how much did we learn in this game that we can use in a Celtics series. Maybe a little bit. Our role players did better. Dame found ways to score. Clearly, he got hot in the fourth quarter. Maybe we've learned some things there, but playing with Giannis, as we talked about in that first part against the Suns game, and what it's like playing without Giannis, there's also a thing to playing with Giannis and what's that like. So we still have one game against the Celtics too. Maybe we can figure something out there. We probably won't show much. They probably won't show much in that game. They got a 10 game lead in us. Why do they want to play their starters against us? Um, I just think so much, as you mentioned, too, has to happen for us even to play the Celtics. The Celtics have to worry about the Heat too, who's had their number the last few years, or they've gone back and forth at each other. They've got to beat each other up. So maybe they're worried about the Heat too. Like they got to do the same thing on their side of the coin. It's just so many things have to happen. I just want to get back to. It felt like last year too, not to keep harping on that Heat series. It felt like we were really stuck up on matchups and we can get this one seed, then our window is wide open. Like we have this, we're gonna get wasn't supposed to be the Heat. It was supposed to be the Bulls or whoever it was supposed to be. But we're like, oh my God, we got this wide open landscape now. We're gonna get home court advantage, all this great stuff. We're gonna be sitting in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then you win one stinking game in the playoffs, and it's like, oh my God. All that planning, all that thinking about it for a month just to win one game. Um, so like I said before, there is merit to what you're saying, and I think that is you need to be ready to, when you do play the Celtics. If you do play the Celtics, this is what you're going to be looking back on and saying, well, they didn't get to see Giannis, so now we got all these new things we can throw at them. It's going to feel great when we have that opportunity. It's just, I guess I don't want that mindset. And again, we don't even know if this is our mindset. Who knows if that was the case? But um, I guess that's just my side of it is last year just changed me so much where I think we actually might be reversed on this argument if it was last year. It feels like, because I remember I was more of the guy who was planning last year of like, I think a one seed really matters. We're going to have the
No.
advantage over everybody. And then it didn't matter. So I think we just somehow are now flipped a little bit more, even though I think we're still pretty even. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't. If Giannis is fully healthy, I don't think there's any discussion about sitting him against them. Like I don't think there's any. But I think it
Yeah.
weighed into. I think it probably weighed into the decision when it was like, okay, he's iffy right now. Like we're pretty much ready to bring him back, but why push it? Give him an extra day. Don't make him sit on a plane twice in a span of 24 hours. Just have him stay in Milwaukee, get treatment, and then he'll be good to go for sure against the Nets. Like I think it played a bit of a role in that. Now, I do think we're doing a little bit of like correlation, correlation versus causation type stuff with the like I don't think the Bucks preparing for last year's playoffs is why they lost in the playoffs. It just happened that they lost in the playoffs after preparing for it. Like to
Yeah.
me, that's what it is. It's I don't think them getting rest and doing any of that. I think they lost in the playoffs because Giannis got hurt in game one. Drew couldn't make a shot if he was throwing a freaking pebble into the ocean. And I mean, Khris was great, but none of the role players really stepped up. Jay was terrible. Um, they lost just because they played bad and Giannis wasn't healthy and ready to help to me. But like in the Heat, Jimmy Butler shot out of his freaking mind in that series. Like to me, that's what happened, and it sucks because I it was that was one of the worst experiences of my life as a Bucks fan. Like it was terrible. But to me, it wasn't because of anything they did leading up to it. It was just how it ended up working out. But um, yeah, we can stop talking about this now. We can move on to the Thunder game here. So the Bucks were still without an important player, somewhat, or at least one that I find important. We don't know about Doc Rivers' thoughts on this, but AJ Green did not play in this Thunder game. But the Bucks did have their big three for the first time since that Phoenix game, I think, when Khris originally got hurt. So I believe it was only the fourth game they had played under Doc Rivers with all three on the court. And honestly, it was probably the best, in my opinion, the best looking all around team win of the season for me. I mean, you could argue that 50-point Celtics game. This is a good Thunder team, a really, really good Thunder team. SGA had a 29 game streak of 20 plus points going and only scored 12. Beasley did do a good job on him. Pat, when he was matched up on him, did pretty well. Dame was bothering him by kind of getting up under him and trying to poke the ball away and stuff. They just handled him really well. And Chet couldn't get anything going. Brook was definitely annoying him with his strength and size. He hasn't had to face too many guys that are at that are his height and that strong. He's faced a lot of guys who are his height and skinnier, like Wemby, and guys that he could at least kind of be able to hang with in terms of strength down low. But Brook was bothering him all game. You could tell he couldn't get his shot going. I mean, the Bucks defense was just scrambling around, and it was the best the defenses looked to me. I mean, they were everywhere. They were refusing to give up on plays. There was a lot of diving around. Beasley made that great play. He dove towards the sideline, saved it. Brook made a nice pass ahead to Giannis, who got the and one, and everybody made sure to pick up Bees after that and tell him what a great play it was. And there was a different, like the team that played the Thunder yesterday, to me, looked like the best team in the NBA. I don't know that you get that every night. You probably don't, but they didn't shoot like an insane amount from three. The Bucks didn't, and they still just ran them off the court. One of the best teams in the West. So I think they're a tough match. I think the Bucks are a tough matchup for the Thunder, just based on size and what the Thunder want to do. But it's an impressive win. Gunnar, what did you notice in this one? What were your thoughts coming out of the game last night?
Yeah, I think obviously Chris's triple double, and you mentioned the lack of, you didn't really mention it, I guess, but it was implied that there is a lack of numbers from everybody all around, but it was a really great team effort, which Chris Middleton, he had, what, 11 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. Dame
Yeah.
didn't have a great night at all. Never really got going. Giannis did pretty good. He was probably our best player for sure. But
Yeah.
really nobody else was a sore thumb for us offensively. And we didn't really have the best offensive game, but our defense was so good that it just took us getting a little bit of life. And some of that defense turning into offense. You mentioned the Beasley diving on the floor. That was part of a 18-2 run, I think, at
Yep.
that point to start the third quarter. They couldn't make a basket for the first 6 minutes of that third quarter. You mentioned size too, with just why we have more size in them and why it's a bad matchup. I think going to Brook more in those situations because Chet's, if he's their five, I feel pretty good about going to Brook or Bobby, even for that case, with post ups and going to that size mismatch. But um, I think credit to Eric Name, he posted a clip which we've been talking about the switching a lot recently with our new defense with Doc Rivers and the communication in general. But he highlighted something that we haven't done really much of, even when we're switching, is a lot of off ball switching, which is before maybe the screen comes, you have Khris and Brook quickly flip guys, and now you're in a better spot for when that screen comes, and now Khris is on SGA. We were able to double him. And you mentioned SGA. Because of that, he wasn't able to get to his spots super easily. Now he's got collapsed on. It was almost, I heard somebody else describe it as sort of like a wall that they would build for Giannis. Is kind of what we were able to do with SGA, which is just put a bunch of guys on him, and now you got to decide what to do with the ball. Some of that ended up leading to someone like Josh Giddey getting open, which he got hot pretty early. But you're gonna make that trade off if it's Josh Giddey. I think he probably made like 3 or 4 threes in this one, off the top of my head. But I'll live with that. And if that's the only source of their offense, which was coming at not really that high of a clip, anyways, um, it just took us getting to that leap of a small burst of offense, and then we can just sort of coast. Um, and then my last point really here with this game was Pat Connaughton, which I haven't been the nicest to him all year, but it's very clear that Doc Rivers is going to use him in the playoff situation, which love it or hate it, that's going to happen. But Pat's proving himself right now. He's doing a ton of the little stuff. He missed probably a good amount of shots he should have made even in this one. The last, maybe I'm thinking of all the 4 games in total, but he's got to probably make a little bit more shots, but he's even hitting at a good clip too. It's just he's getting a lot of good opportunities within this offense. So he's starting to do the little things like offensive rebounds, putbacks, stuff that he was doing in 2021, staying in front of guys, not closing out on guys a lot better than that what he normally does and flies into the second row of the stands. But just being a solid player and just doing the good stuff that we need him to do, because it's very clear, like I said, he's going to get a chance in the playoffs, and we're going to need him to be valuable for us. So, really, all my notes. I don't know if this was our best one of the season. I know there's a couple other good ones, but this late in the season, a team that's young, but they're going to be up there and they're going to be at top of the West. Really, really good test, especially on the first day where you mentioned all of our big three back together finally. Um, you see what happens even when it doesn't even feel like it's our best game with all these guys. But the threat of Chris Middleton being out there and doing everything that he did in this one, um, it's just another option that people can't account for anymore. You can't leave Chris Middleton open on a wing, which then you have to cover him more now. That leaves a wide open space for Giannis or Dame. Um, so it just changes the whole dynamic of our team, even if the shots aren't falling, which is what you saw here today. And if we play this good of defense, I there's probably at one point when we hired Doc, we were pretty skeptical if we could even win a championship still, but um, I think we control our own destiny if this is how good of defense we're playing and we're healthy. I just feel really, really good after this game. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the reason I would look at it as the best win is partially because of what we talked about earlier, and that's the ball was moving and skipping around while Giannis was playing and while all of them were playing. And Giannis ended up, we he had 30 and 19. We're like, yeah, he had a pretty good game. Like, that's probably the one guy. He almost had 30, 20 in less than 34 minutes. So he was quite good. But and I will say, back to the injury thing, like he was explosive last night for the first time. He was playing through that Achilles thing and then playing through the hamstring a little bit. He looked back to how we are used to seeing him, which is somebody who can just go up with the best of them. He was he just looked like Giannis again, which was really good to see. He had 8 offensive rebounds. He That's got to be pretty close to a career high for him. I can't imagine he's had too many games with 8 offensive boards, but um, and then like you said, the defense, that was Oklahoma City's lowest point total of the season, 93. That's a good offense, a really, really good offense, and a really good shooting team that we were able to run off the line. They weren't just missing wide open shots. We were contesting, making them shoot them off the dribble, making them shoot them on sidestepping. Like it was just really, really good all around. Bobby honestly had a good game in general. Like he shot pretty well, but I thought he did a lot of good things. Um, Dame to me, this is one of my favorite Dame games so far, in that he only had 11 points. Um, I didn't feel bad about any of the shots he took. I didn't really feel bad about any of the shots he passed up. And I loved his defense the entire game. And there have been games where he hasn't shot well, and that's when the defense has been a little bit of a struggle for him, where he hasn't wanted to lock in, or he's been letting like a bad call or a missed call in his opinion on the other side affect his defense, and he didn't let any of that happen last night. He was really, really good on the defensive end. It just felt like everybody was doing their role, and like the optimized role for what they're going to do in the playoffs. Other than that, I would obviously want Dame having more shots and having the ball a little bit more in the most perfect outcome. But like you said with Pat, he was 1 for 5 from three, but he was 4 for 4 from two. He was getting rebounds. Um, he was just active. He was, like you said, he sliding his feet, staying in front of people. Like I was talking about earlier, he guarded SGA a little bit and did a pretty good job on him. He looks to me like the guy that we did see in the playoffs in 2021. Now, he shot insanely well in that Suns final series, and that really helped, I think, some of the how people look back at that playoff run. But he was pretty good. He was playable in every series during that run. Like I never had a real problem with him being on the court during that run. And you can't say the same for many of the other role players. Like Bobby was unplayable in that Nets series completely. He could not play in it. But the Hawks series, even if Giannis hadn't got hurt, he probably matched up decently in that one. In the Sun series, he did his job in that series too, and that's when he became the legend. But um, it was just good. It was everybody playing their role, everybody kind of doing what they're capable of, and not trying to do more than what they're capable of. Brooke had a really good game on both ends. It was good. Bev barely shot, but he gave good minutes when he was in. He played good defense. He annoyed the Thunder. Like there was just a lot of positive out of last night's game, and really I don't have any negatives from last night's game, which is probably the first time I came out of a game this year without even a nitpick to talk about. Like that was a good game. They played really well, really well. We shot 32% from three, like, and beat one of the better teams by 25. Like it was just really, really good basketball. If it was one of our hotter shooting nights, like it would have been another 50-point type blowout like it was against the Celtics. So that might be my favorite win of the game. Not sure it was necessarily the best one, but I think what we want to talk about here quick before we wrap this up. Um, and you pointed this out, but I've been seeing it, and there's been a lot of talk about it on Twitter and stuff lately. Since the calendar flipped to 2024, officials, and from what I've heard, this has been told to, this isn't like a coincidence. I'm pretty sure the NBA started mandating this in a way. There are way fewer free throws than there were at the beginning of the year. And um, they're letting, I think they were seeing these offensive ratings and everybody's just, they were getting to a point where it was like, okay, we have to give the defense some ability to play physical. And so I guess the question is, do you prefer it be officiated this way, where they're letting them be more physical, where they're letting guys play a little bit more? And then do you think this correlates with Dame's free throw rate going down? And I'll say quickly before you answer either of those, I do think there is the NBA kind of does a thing where they look at a total number of free throws that they almost want a team to get at the end of a game. Giannis is going to eat up a huge chunk of those for the Bucks. I do think that's playing part of a role here with Dame's free throws going down. I think they can't. They feel as though they can't give the Bucks two guys who are going to the free throw line 10 plus times a game. So they were doing that at first this season, and then Dame all of a sudden started slipping. But Gunnar, to answer the first question, what do you think about the physicality, and do you like it more this way than it was at the beginning of the season?
As a fan, I think I enjoy it a little bit more. It feels more just like they're letting guys play, which is probably the easiest way to wrap it up. Um, and it's more of a playoff style basketball, which people like. I do think that'll probably get tiring though throughout a whole season, which sounds like a complete cop out and all their babies or whatever, whatever people would say from the 90s. But like, um, players have probably gotten used to this type of style now, and it did get out of hand though in the first half of the season where the points per game were like skyrocketing. Um, I keep thinking about a team like the Pacers for some reason. They had an insane offense, and now they're starting to fall off for sure. But I think with Dame specifically, it hurts guys like him a lot more because that's how he gets in rhythms. And it's not a huge coincidence that I think his probably coldest streak of his season this year was when this all started to happen because his free throws were his bread and butter. That's how he can kind of get in rhythm. That's how he can control a game. It first started with him shooting, and all of a sudden he wasn't getting his, they weren't and one necessarily, but so many calls that stay on the floor versus his shots. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, why is they're not rewarding his shots anymore, but they somehow seem to do it for other people. But very specifically, they seem like they're targeting Dame with this because he's the one who does it the most, outside of like James Harden, who kind of manipulates it in a different way, which he still tends to get calls. But Dame's free throws have like gotten cut in half attempts wise in this calendar year. Um, and now he's had to figure out how to just play through that though, and I think it's made him a better player, which now he's just shooting the ball. He's not worrying about trying to draw fouls as much, which is part of his game, but it's been able to help him score better, I guess, is be more efficiently rather than looking for fouls, which should help you in the playoffs, like I said, and it's a different type of test for us. I just think it's Dame is getting fouled, which is why it sucks sometimes. Like it's like that's clearly a foul. Like you can't just not call it now because he's somehow been able to manipulate the rules. He's just using it to his advantage. I guess he's not really even manipulating it. But I guess as a fan though, I would prefer this style. But I also prefer it when the ball's moving and people are chucking threes and whatnot. And um, maybe I'm used to it because we have, like you said, Giannis, so I'm used to free throws and taking breaks. I heard someone bring up a good point. Here's my last point of those breaks where you get in a good rhythm, obviously, but people are used to like it's almost like free timeouts sometimes where they when you have Giannis and Dame on your team and Dame, maybe that's the way that he calms himself down is getting to the free throw line and he's just seeing shots go and now he's more calm and everyone's used to getting these free timeouts. Now you take that away, guys are getting more tired and that's where you get worse offense overall. So um I like it as a fan. I see pretty much all aspects of it, but I don't like when it affects my players like Damian Lillard. So please stop doing that. But do you have any different thoughts on that?
No, I prefer this greatly. It's not even close for me. I have enjoyed watching NBA games a lot more since they started officiating it this way. I do think Dame gets screwed out of quite a few actual continuation shots, not even continue out of actual jumpers he's taking getting called on the ground. I do think they're officiating that incorrectly, but just the general of like they're kind of letting hand checking happen a little bit more. Um, which is good timing when we get a guy like Patrick Beverley on our team. And Dame plays that way when he does play hard on defense. He's more handsy and he likes to go after the ball. And that's part of the reason he's gotten so many steals at the end of games is that they're not calling him for some ticky tack stuff when he goes to attack the ball. So I think while he is getting screwed on the free throws on his end, on the offensive end, I do think he's been able to get some of his deflections and steals and stuff because they're letting him play this way too. So no, I very, very much prefer watching the game in the second half, basically, versus what it was at the beginning. And I love good offense and I love watching, but it was getting very annoying watching good defense get penalized. Like that's not how it should be. Um, if good offense beats good defense, that's great, but good defense shouldn't just be penalized for the offense having the ability to do whatever they want, basically, is what was happening at the beginning of the year. All right, I gotta go here soon. So let's get to our random bucks. Why don't you kick it off today, Gunnar? What do you got?
I picked Danny G, Dan Gazarich. If only this man knew how many butt of jokes he was in my household growing up. Me and my sisters would just cry laughing at him watching play the game of basketball. He was just big at, I think he was like a first round pick, I think. Maybe like early second round or something. But um, either way, he was talented, tall, athletic, but this man had no coordination, it felt like at times, and he would just be flying around the court. Um, and like I said, if somebody played bad, my sisters and I would just call him like Danny G, or he looks like Danny G, or we call Thon Maker sometimes Danny G the way he plays. But he just literally became an icon of what it looks like to not play good at basketball, which I apologize. That's just for whatever reason, that's what you were in my household. So you somehow provided me happy memories, even though you didn't do much for us. But I think he might have even started for us. That's in our one of those years,
He
or
got a
he was
legitimate
playing.
extension.
Yeah, well,
We
yeah,
paid
Jake's
him.
got a big extension. Yeah,
Yeah.
because of him being tall and athletic. That's
Yep.
probably the only reason why.
Yep.
But um, yeah, then I think he ended up on the Warriors too, which I was shocked at. But he did get some run with us. So yeah.
Yeah, he was I like to call him the combo of Miles Plumlee and Thon Maker. That was basically what Dan Gadzarich was. So without the shooting of Thon, he could not shoot. He was like a 50% 3-point or free throw shooter, not 3-point, free throw shooter. I got in trouble once as a kid because he missed a layup and I smacked my couch and I said, Dan. And my dad thought I said damn, and he was really mad at me because I was like 5, and he
Oh,
was like, "Why are you saying that? You shouldn't say that word." I'm like, "I said his name." Anyway, that's a story. My guy is Jerry Stackhouse. He spent 1 year with the Bucks. He was okay for the Bucks in that year, surprisingly decent actually for a pretty old dude at that point. Um, I was looking at his stats earlier today. I don't have them pulled up right now, but he was a much worse shooter than I thought. Thinking like he was a below 30% 3-point shooter the
yeah.
majority of his career. He shot like 34% for the Bucks, so maybe that was part of the reason, but I remember him as like the high flying dude who could dunk when he was younger. And then I
Hmm.
remember him making a decent amount of shots for the Bucks. So in my head, it was like, oh, he did both of those. And he didn't. He was a terrible shooter, but he had a really strong career, a couple time All-Star. He almost with the Mavericks later in his career when he had kind of phased out of that portion of his career, he was competing for six man of the year awards and stuff. So he was a good defender, very high flying athlete. And he spent a year with the Bucks, but that was a big name. So whenever a big name came to the Bucks at that point, it was pretty exciting. Ooh, former All-Star Jerry Stackhouse is a Buck, and then
That
oh
was the
yeah,
start of the
he's
Fear the Deer
37.
year playoffs.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah. Well, that's all we got for this one. So if you're listening, please like and subscribe on whatever platform you are on. Remember to follow us on Twitter at the Cream City Pod, and please feel free to leave feedback for us on how we can get better. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Go Bucks.